Your faith is imperfect. That seems like an aggressive way to start. Let's put a pin in that. We'll come back to it in a minute. If you got a Bible, and I hope you do, we're going to be in Genesis chapter 16 this morning as we unpack kind of in our continued study through the book of Genesis, which we've been in since January, so it's a real short study that we're doing. But it's 16 chapters this whole time. What we're going to see is one of the most impactful events in all of human history. One decision, one choice that has impacted millions of lives over thousands of years. We're also going to start off with something that's kind of heavy. In fact, it may, for some of you, it'll hit close to home. Bear with me. The harder that it hits, the more you're going to need, I think, what comes after it. So we're studying the life of Abram as we walk through the book of Genesis. We're right kind of in the middle of his story. Abram was a man who was called by God to leave his home in Ur, to go to a land he'd never known. God promised Abram when he was 75 years old that he would be the father of a great nation, that his descendants would be too numerous to count. He was 75. He had no children. His wife was barren. So it was kind of an impossible promise. And so, right, it says that Abram believed God, and it was credited to him as righteousness. And this is one of those things we have to kind of stop and hit, because despite the fact that the Bible is regularly and repeatedly clear about how this works, Christianity as a whole doesn't seem to get it. Righteousness is not rule following. It is not behavior modification. It is not religious activity. It is not being a good person, living a good life, feeling good and having good intentions and shooting good vibes out into the universe. Righteousness is literally to be in right standing with God. And the way in which we do that, as said by God in His Word, is through belief. Abram believed God, and it was credited to him as righteousness. Now, how do we know that Abram believed God? Abram obeyed God. Belief will always look like obedience. See, God says to Abram, go, and all Abram had to go on, not knowing where they were going, was the word of God. And so Abram left everything and everyone he'd ever known to go to some land he didn't know how he was going to get there, didn't know how long it was going to take, didn't know what it was going to look like when he got there. God said, go, Abram went. That's belief. Because when you believe something, it's not just something that you think in your head, like, I believe the sky is blue or water is wet. It's not something that you feel in your heart, like, oh, I feel like I believe in this. Belief starts here. Everything that you do, everything that you feel, everything that you think is built on the foundation of what you believe. And so belief will always be made manifest in what you do. So Abram demonstrates that he is a man of incredible faith, of incredible belief in God. And yet, despite being perhaps the greatest man of faith to ever live, time has passed. The promise that God made to Abram was pretty much impossible when he made it, but now it's been 10 years. And there's been no progress, no evidence that God was any closer to fulfilling the promise that he made than when he first gave it. And so doubt starts to set in. Genesis chapter 16, verse 1. Now Sarai, Abram's wife, had borne him no children. She had a female Egyptian servant whose name was Hagar. This is likely one of the servants that he got when he fled to go down to Egypt, and his wife became a concubine of Pharaoh. And Sarai said to Abram, behold now, the Lord has prevented me from bearing children. That's pretty aggressive. Go into my servant. It may be that I shall obtain children by her. And Abram listened to the voice of Sarai, which is not a good idea. And after Abram lived 10 years in the land of Canaan, Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar the Egyptian, her servant, and gave her to Abram, her husband, as a wife. So Sarai tells the love of her life, her husband of some 60 years, to sleep with another woman. And it kind of sounds unthinkable until you understand her world. In most ancient cultures, fertility was everything. A woman's status, her identity, and her security was built on a foundation of her ability to bear children, specifically sons. Women who had lots of children were considered blessed and of great character. Women who did not have children were considered cursed by God. And so both externally and internally, her sense of value and self-worth came from her ability to produce children. So for a woman to not be able to do that, it wasn't just disappointing, it was devastating. Every relationship in her life would suffer because of this. Her dignity, her worth, her relationship with God would be questioned. Oftentimes, the husband would divorce, replace, or ignore his wife as he sought to create an heir through a woman who might actually be able to do it because she clearly couldn't. Barrenness was one of the worst tragedies that could happen to a woman in this culture and time. Because it wasn't just a part of them. It became. Sarai's lived with that her whole life. Decade after decade, year after year. Trying and being unable to bear a child. And she's heard everything that everybody says. She's seen the glances, the pitied whispers. Oh, bless her heart. She's endured the unwanted and unsolicited advice. You just got to relax. Don't stress about it so much. It'll happen. That church people love to give. See, there's something that happens. It's a really weird thing that for some reason, when people love Jesus, they seem to think that they have the right to broach very personal, very heavy, very intimate subjects in casual and flippant ways and in wildly inappropriate places, like a church lobby. That like in passing, it's okay for us to be like, hey, we've never actually had a conversation out of this building, but I heard you just got married. When are you guys having kids? I'm sorry, what's your first name again? And we will ask and engage in these very intense, very personal questions that oftentimes are emotional minefields without any consideration for how broaching the question might make the person we're asking it feel. But so let me just say this, just because it's not heavy or emotional or weighty to you doesn't mean it's not to them. And what we are called to be as followers of Jesus is compassionate, caring, thoughtful, and considerate. What that means is that we think about how our words, questions, or actions might affect someone else, not just how we feel about it. So let me give you a couple of rules for what we'll call basic human decency. Because as Christians, we got to do better. Because one of the things that happens, and it's so frustrating, but the reality is Christians are this unique thing where we can be a well-intentioned emotional Chucky doll. Right? Where you just kind of spent double-digit hours with a person outside of this building. You do not have the right to casually or flippantly broach emotional, heavy, or impactful subjects. You want to get into that, you feel like, oh, God's telling me that I should talk to this person about that. Good, do it, but do it in a place where you have time. And take them to dinner, take them to lunch, get out of the building where you could sit down with them for more than 3 seconds in a lobby before you get interrupted and ask a really heavy question. Do it in a place where it's appropriate, you could actually have the conversation. If you don't care to put the time in, you don't have the right to ask the question. Don't even bring it up. Number 2, if you don't know them, if you're not in a place where you can talk about it, don't talk about it. The church lobby is not a place to ask really heavy questions to people that could cause the Pandora's box of emotions to open up. And then you're like, oh, I'm sorry, I got to go get over this. And they're just sitting there in a pool of their own feelings. Don't do it. Number 3, any sentence that's going to come out of your mouth that starts with the phrase, you just gotta. Here's what I want you to do. If you hear the word, you just gotta, come out of your mouth, I want you to stop and just stay stopped. Okay? Just shut up. Right? He said, shut up at church. Yeah, he did. Because y'all need to do it sometimes. I'm not just being y'all just Christians as a whole. There is nothing good, meaningful, beneficial, or uplifting that is going to come out of your mouth after the phrase, you just gotta. What it's going to do is stab them in the heart with a bunch of feelings because you've belittled, made petty, and insignificant the pain and struggles they have in an apathetic, indifferent kind of way, and now they're emotionally bleeding out on the floor where you're like, oh, I don't know why you're reacting like that. You seem too sensitive. Absolutely not. Any phrase that starts, you just gotta, put your top lip on top of your bottom lip, hold them together. And just stay like that. Breathe through your nose for the next 5 minutes. Think about what you did. We have to stop being emotional Chucky dolls. We have to stop trying to offer cheap, petty solutions to real pain and heartache. Because do you really think when you look at that person who's struggling with the fact that they just got diagnosed with a disease that's going to take them away from their family, that the helpful answer is, well, you just got to have faith. Oh, thanks. Hadn't thought of that. Super helpful. Would never have come to that conclusion on my own. You have changed my life. No, they're going to look at you like a jerk, because that's what you are. Sarai has endured this her whole life. Unsolicited, unwanted advice from people who are over-inserting themselves into her life. And she's watched. Woman after woman, younger than her, starts glowing with pregnancy, surrounded by children of their own, living the life that she wanted. The life that she thought she'd have had by now. And every time she sees it, it opens a fresh wound in her heart. And a part of her feels bitter and frustrated and jealous as she looks at all these other women who have what she wants. And then the other part of her hates herself for feeling that way because she knows it's petty. She knows she should be grateful. She should be rejoicing for them. She should be happy for what they have. But she can't be because they have what she wants and she still doesn't have it. So she is at war with herself. And by this point, she believes what everyone else is saying about her. That she's broken. That she's lesser. That she is a failure as a woman. And the worst part of this is that some of you do not need me to explain how Sarai is feeling. Because you have felt it. Because you have known it, you have walked in that pain, in that struggle, in that tension and heartache. You have lived in her shoes. Maybe you didn't walk in them as long as she had, but you know exactly how she feels because you have felt it. Here's what you need to hear. God's plan for Sarai went far beyond bearing a child. She was part of the covenant. She was part of the journey of faith. She was part of the legacy that would bless nations. Through her, as through Abram, the Messiah and Savior of the world would come. Peace and hope and joy to all people. And everyone who ever lived would be blessed because of her and her descendants. And she was a part of that. God didn't love Sarai because she had a child. He loved her long before she ever did. And even when she doubted, even when she laughed in disbelief, he remained faithful. So listen, you are not broken. You are not lesser. Child or not, God sees you fully. And your ability to love, to nurture, to serve, to care, and to follow Jesus are not hindered. In the eyes of God, you are whole, you are chosen, and you are cherished. Because what defines you, what gives you value, it's not a child that you have, it's the child that you are. See, your faith is imperfect. It was the promise that God gave to her husband. Was that nowhere in that promise, in his reiteration of that promise, does it include her? She's not. It's been 10 years, she's starting to think, starting to wonder, starting to fear, am I the prophet? God has not yet fulfilled his promise to my husband because it's for him, but not for me, and I'm in the way. And so she convinces herself that her intentions are good, that this is a noble sacrifice, that she is sacrificing her heart for the good of her husband and to help God fulfill his promise. But God never asked her to do that. And listen, our job anything. Sarai's plan, born from pain and desperation, brings great harm to everyone involved. And it's not just problematic practically. It's probably God had promised through the line of Shem would come the Messiah, would come the Savior. Abram and Sarai were both from the line of Shem. Promise. Hagar is not. She's a descendant of Ham. So her and the promise of God. Now, it's worth noting that her Mormon sister wives vibes that we get from it. This was a very common social convention, a practical solution to a deep-seated problem. Practiced for 1,000 years, everywhere from Egypt to Babylon, acceptable, understandable, logical, reasonable, normal, and natural in the eyes of everyone except God. And this is my favorite part, is when people, will call them ignorant, say that things like the Bible's not really relevant today. It's this ancient book. It's lost touch with, well, guess what? The first book of the Bible, we have the world's first hall pass. Now, if you don't know what that is, that's why God invented Google. Look it up at your own risk. Has nothing to do with being in school, I'll tell you that. And, well, it. All right, so let me just, guys, I'm going to help you out here with this. The answer is no. No. Hard, firm, quick as you can. No. Is she pretty? No. It's okay, you can tell me, I won't be mad. No, we're not playing that game. Sorry, love you, not gonna do it. No, because here's the deal, bride and love of my heart. You are my standard of beauty, and the only attractive trait that any woman anywhere else could ever have is a trait that reminds me of you. And personally, I prefer the name brand to the cheap knockoff, so no, they're not pretty. That's the answer. Any other answer, you real dumb, and they don't have a cure for that. I'm sorry. Abram picks the dumb route because Abram is stupid. What he should have done here is comfort his wife. He should have identified her pain, reassured her, hugged her, reminded her of his love for her, reminded her of his commitment to her. You are my bride, and whether or not we ever have children, which we know we will because God said we will, I'm going to love you and you're going to be mine. He should have comforted her. He should have reminded her of the promise. He should have shut this down immediately and actually led their family. Instead, his wife says, I want you to go have sex with another woman so that we can have a baby. And he goes, okay, do-do-do. Idiot. This moment perfectly parallels the garden. Just as Adam listened to Eve, so Abram listens to Sarai. Just as Eve gives the fruit to Adam, so Sarai gives Hagar to Abram. In both cases, it was the man who had the word from God, the man who was given the promise, the man who was entrusted with walking faithfully in it. And in both cases, he stands right there, passive and pathetic, and participates knowingly and willingly in what he knows goes against God's instructions. This is Abram's fall. It's not a stumble. It's not a, ooh, that was a bad choice. This is a fall. In Galatians 6:7, it says, God is not mocked. What one sows from that he will also reap, and the one who sows to his flesh will reap from that flesh corruption. Abram and Sarai will spend the rest of their life reaping the harvest of corruption that they are sowing here. Your faith is imperfect. Verse 4. And he went in to Hagar, and she conceived. And when he saw that she had conceived, she looked with contempt on her mistress. And Sarai said to Abram, may the wrong done to me be on you. I gave my servant to your embrace, and when she saw that she had conceived, she looked at me with contempt. May the Lord judge between you and me. But Abram said to Sarai, behold, your servant is in your power. Do to her as you please. Then Sarai dealt harshly with her, and she fled from her. Here is my biggest problem with Sarai's plan. It is, she's created a scenario with no good outcome. Husband with another woman for no reason. If she does, it is not going to make her feel better. It is going to make her feel worse. It is going to take the pain, the broken Well, Hagar has a baby, gets pregnant, and now, guess what? Sarai feels worse. And so she takes all the pain, all the frustration, the bitterness, the heartache that she's feeling, and she places it on Hagar's shoulders. And character. They treat Hagar kind of loses it. The way it's worded in the all right? Really? That's what it says? Exodus, come on. Frustrated. And so she lashes out, enduring on his shoulders, and she lashes out at him, to which the great divide of gender responses is all the men told him to do. What did she want to happen? What did she think was going to happen? This is exactly what she said. She said do this. He said yes, ma'am, and now he's in trouble. But we all know if he'd said, I mean, come on, what did she expect? This girl is tripping. Idiots. Well, of course that's not what she wanted him to do. Use the little gray matter between your ears for just a second. She wanted reassurance. What she wanted him to do was say no. That he still loved her despite the fact that she had not given him the child that they wanted. Is Sarai's reaction fair? %, absolutely. He's the head of the house. God spoke to him, not to her. Something like this from happening. But rather than do his job, he just do like an idiot. Her was far greater. So now there's tension between Sarah and Hagar, to the surprise of literally no one. Again, it's only going to get worse when Isaac is born. In her pain, because Hagar is mistreating her now that she's asking her husband for help. This is where he should have comforted her. Second, reassure her. Rebuke Hagar for treating your wife poorly. The social convention of the Code of Hammurabi, which basically states you have the right to do whatever you want with your property. Slaves and servants count as your property, so you can do whatever you want. Abram's answer to her in do what you want is, I don't care. This is not my problem. Deal with it. Figure it out. Do what you want. Does nothing to do with me. I'm out. There are no good guys in this story. Okay, Abram is a passive, pathetic, impotent man in this story who is uncaring towards both of his now wives. Sarai and Hagar are horrible to each other, not expressing even an ounce of human decency towards one another. There's no care, there's no compassion, just people hurting each other. All of which could have been avoided if Abram had just been a leader. If he'd just taken responsibility. If he just owned his mistake. Or been enough of a man to not make that mistake in the first place. And all this suffering, all this heartache and pain, all the chaos of this whole situation began with distrusting God. What if God's not going to do what he said? What if God's not going to give us what we want? What if we trust him and it doesn't go the way we think that it should? We need to make sure it happens. We need to find a way. We need to do it ourselves. Church, this is what happens when you take the role of God into your own hands. This is what happens when we try to claim, seize, or control his promises, his work, or his place. This is what happens when we try to rush his timing. See, when God has a plan and purpose for your life, he also has timing for which that will happen. And nothing good ever comes from rushing God's timing. Abram and Sarai's relationship, it will never be the same. Because even with forgiveness and grace, there are wounds that leave scars. And while God can forgive all sins, we are not God. And it is ridiculous to think that people will be able to perfectly forgive just any sin that you commit to them. Try, attempt, absolutely, but that forgiveness will rarely be perfect and it will rarely be always. Because the reality is, sin leaves scars. Sin has consequences. And the wrongs that we do to one another can have consequences that never fully heal in this life. This is why the Bible teaches us more about how to live than how to say we're sorry. Because the best case scenario is to prevent the pain. Because not all of it will heal. Your faith is imperfect. Verse 7. The angel of the Lord found her. Her is Hagar by the spring of water in the wilderness. The spring was on the way to Shur. Shur is on the border of Egypt, so she is returning home to her people. And he said to her, Hagar, servant of Sarai, where have you come from and where are you going? This is really fun when angels or God does this because it's like he's asking questions he already knows the answer to. But here we are. And she said, I am fleeing from my mistress Sarai. Yeah, he already knew that. And the angel of the Lord said to her, return to your mistress and submit to her. The angel of the Lord also said to her, I will surely multiply your offspring so that they cannot be numbered for multitude. And the angel of the Lord said to her, behold, you are pregnant and shall bear a son. You shall call his name Ishmael, because the Lord has listened to your affliction, and he shall be a wild donkey of a man, his hand against everyone, and everyone's hand against him, and he shall dwell over against all his kinsmen. So she called the name of the Lord who spoke to her, you are the God of seeing, for she said, truly, here I have seen him who looks after me. Therefore, the well was called Bir Laharoi. That's exactly how you pronounce it, don't ask. It lies between Kadesh and Bered. And Hagar bore Abram a son, and Abram called the name of his son, whom Hagar bore Ishmael. Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bore Ishmael to Abram. So Hagar flees the toxic couple of the people of God to return to her own people in Egypt where she can feel safe and secure once again. On her way, she meets the angel of the Lord. This is an important distinction. This is not an angel of the Lord, of which there are multitudes. This is the angel of the Lord. This moniker occurs 12 different occasions in the Old Testament. There's a lot of mystery and intrigue, and who is this, the angel of the Lord? I believe, and I'm right in case you're wondering, is that this is a pre-incarnation of Jesus. I can defend it, but I'm not going to do that. We don't have time for it right now. He sees her in her plight. He knows her in her pain. And he calls her to go back to the toxic situation she was running out of. Says to go back and submit to Sarai. And he promises to Hagar something that is never promised to another woman in the Old Testament, that she would have descendants as too numerous to count. It's very similar to the promise that God gives to Abram. Only time it's given to a woman in the Old Testament. He says, go back. You will have a great number of children, and your son will be a wild donkey, or a real wandering man free of social convention. What were you thinking? That he would create conflict and struggle wherever he goes. Look, I'm a dad, right? This does not sound like a very comforting promise. Right? Because you're like sitting there going, okay, hey, your descendants are going to be too numerous to count. Great, that sounds awesome. And your son's going to be wild, crazy, and completely impossible to control. Oh, that sounds much less awesome. Do you have, like, some medication I can give him or something? Like, what? That doesn't sound great at all. But for some reason, she's comforted by that. She's like, all right, I'll go back. This is one of the rare cases where we get to see the consequence of sin laid out across human history. Just like we see with Babel, right? God says, spread out, fill the earth. We're like, we don't want to do that. Let's all gather together and build a big tower. So God confuses their language. And then they spread out and fill the earth. God's command is still fulfilled. His will, his purpose, his plan will never be stopped or thwarted. The difference is now humanity is going to suffer, struggle, and have a lot more hardship because of our disobedience. That's what happens at Babel. It's also what happens here. God's plan, his promise is still going to happen because God is going to be faithful. He's always going to do what he says he will do. His plan is unchanged. His purpose, his line, his promise, unchanged. But the consequences for Abram's descendants are now going to be great. They're going to suffer and struggle a whole lot more because Abram and Sarai tried to shortcut his promise, tried to shortcut his plan, and work around it with another woman. To this day, the descendants of Ishmael have been a thorn in the side of the descendants of Abram. Over 1,000 years, oceans of blood have been shed. Ooh, let's make a political statement. Nope, let's make a biblical one. You want politics? Turn on the news. We don't do that here. And please don't talk to me about this afterwards or send me an email about it. It's not a conversation I'm going to have with you. Here's what I'm going to say about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. This is where it starts. This is why it's happening. Genesis 16. This is the consequence. The conflict, the pain, the bloodshed that we see today exists because Abram and Sarai thought they could be clever and work their way around what God's promised. See, the important part of this, not the political part, the important part of this is that nobody expects that our actions, that our choices are going to have consequences and cause pain and problem that last a millennia, but all sin has a price. Every act against God, no matter if it's great or small, logical or illogical, reasonable or unreasonable, or my personal favorite, well, it's what everybody does. It's normal. When were we called to be normal? When was what God says is right based on common approval? I'll give you a hint. The answer is nowhere, ever, never. No matter how logical, justifiable, or seemingly small and insignificant it is, every sin and every action against God has a consequence and has a price. Even when there's grace and forgiveness, the difference is you might not always be the one that pays it. So often, we suffer, we struggle, and we endure chaos and hardship and trial after trial after trial in our lives because like Abram and Sarai in this moment, we fail to trust God. We try to claim it, try to hold it, try to seize it. His promises, his provision, his protection. So I can't trust God to do this for me. I need to do it for myself. I can't trust God to provide. I'll provide for myself. I can't trust God to bring my future about the way I want it to be, so I'll do it myself. And we try to do what God is supposed to do rather than trusting God to do it. We try to make it happen on our own. We try to play God, we try to replace God, or we try to rush God. And let me just tell you, all of human history, that has never gone well. See, your faith is imperfect. Now, before you think I'm trying to insult you when I say that, let me explain it. Your faith is imperfect. So is Abram's. Your faith is imperfect. So was Sarai's. Your faith is imperfect. Moses, Peter, David, Paul, Daniel, name a person. Anybody who loved God and followed Jesus, the recipe is the same. It's 3 ingredients. Imperfect person, imperfect faith, perfect God. Here's the greatest comfort and peace I can give you, church. God doesn't ask or expect you to be perfect. Here's the challenge that comes with that. Your imperfection is not an excuse. Jesus didn't call you to be his, to live on mission for him, to be a disciple who makes disciples, thinking that you were going to be perfect. He knew exactly what you would be. Every failure, every shortcoming, every imperfection you would have, he knew it all before he called you. And yet, that doesn't change the fact that he called you. Which means you can sit there and say, well, I'm not capable of that. I'm not qualified for that. I'm not the right person for that. And that excuse isn't as valid as the air it took to breathe it out. There is no excuse that you can give that will be valid in the eyes of God for not doing what he says to do. We are all called to live on mission for his kingdom, to make disciples of all peoples. Oh, hold on, Pastor, my gift isn't really discipleship. So let me explain something real quick to you. Discipleship is not a spiritual gift. Hospitality is a spiritual gift. Teaching is a spiritual gift. Evangelism is a spiritual gift. Those are specific callings that some people have, not everybody has. Disciple making, not a specific call. It is a general command, a universal command given to all who follow Jesus, meaning if you are a follower of Jesus, the call and expectation that he has placed on your life is that you will not only follow him to the point of death to yourself, but that you will help lead and guide others to do the same. Oh, I'm not qualified to do that. Yes, you are. Jesus called you to do it. Therefore, you're qualified. Unless you want to argue with Jesus, which I don't recommend. I've tried it. It never works. You are qualified because Jesus called you to do it. And at the end of this life, you and I, we will stand before Jesus and we will give an account for our life. And he will say one of two things to us. First, well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful with many things. Come and share in your master's happiness. Or, and this or should make your blood turn. Why? Did you not do what I told you to do? And do you really think that you can stand before the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, the breath of all creation, in his glory and majesty, with the holes in his wrists and feet that were put there for your sake, and you can offer him some cheap, petty excuse that you and I today both know are not valid? Is that how you want to stand before him? Because we will all stand before him. And what are you going to have to say when you get there? Is it an excuse? Here's my reason, Jesus, why I didn't do it. What if the reason he called you is because you can't do it? Because you don't have the gift, the passion, the ability, the natural skill to do what he's calling you to do, and that forces you to rely on him so that it's not your glory but his glory. Wait, that sounds exactly like, I don't know, every person that God's ever used in the Bible ever. See, the devil loves to take our imperfections and turn them into deep-seated insecurities, into excuses that we use to justify inactivity and stagnation in our own lives. Because your faith isn't perfect. Abram was perhaps the greatest man of faith to ever live. And yet what we see all throughout his story are continual moments of failure. Big, gross, nasty failures, and moments of faithlessness. And if his incredible faithlessness, because let me just explain this to you, right? If his faithlessness, the impact of that, millions of lives across thousands of years, none of us can claim that. None of us have done something so horrible, so bad, so destructive, so corrupt or evil or wicked in any way. None of our sins have impacted thousands of years and millions of people. Abram's has. He's destroyed lives, homes, generations with his faithlessness and failures. And yet, his failures and his faithlessness did not stop God from using him to be one of the most important people in his entire redemptive process. So if that didn't stop God from using Abram, why do you think that your imperfections might stop him from using you? We got to stop making excuses and start living for the mission that we were called to. There's I forget his name, but he's a public speaker, and a Christian who has severe cerebral palsy, which has massively impacted his ability to speak clearly. And yet he does it all the time. My favorite thing is every sermon he ends with this same statement. I have cerebral palsy. What is your excuse? What if the reason that God is calling you to something is not because you can, but because you can't? Qualified to stand up here? I always joke that my sister lived without sin for 16 years because she watched me and then didn't do that. And for those 16 years, she lived a perfect life. I am terrified of public speaking. That's not a joke. People think I'm trying to be funny when I say it. It's not. I've been doing it for 20 years. Still freaks me out every time. The insignificant way use someone like me to do something for his kingdom. Why would you ever think he can't use you? With him, and to bring change and transformation into the lives of the people we come in contact with. And it's time that we started doing it and stopped making excuses for it. Because what we have been called to is too important for us to sit back, make excuses, or leave to someone else. And for none of you is that to sit in a chair and be comfortable. Is for in some small way to use you to reshape how the world looks. Are you going to make excuses? Or are you going to stand up in faith and obey because you believe, because you trust, because you have surrendered yourself to him? And what belief really looks like is submission and surrender to Jesus, even when what he calls you to do goes against everything that you would desire or want to do on your own. I mean, Jesus couldn't have made it more clear. You want to follow me? Die to yourself. We all have a place in us, a thing in us that needs to die so that we can faithfully walk with him. What's yours? Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the life that we have in you, for the hope that we have in you. And I pray that you would stir all of us to walk in faith, to live in faith, that we would be seeking your kingdom and you would use us as your people to share your love and grace with the world. We thank you for Jesus. We thank you for grace. On the side, and you know what? Infertility is not the pain that everybody deals with, but everybody has something, a struggle, a pain, a thing that they're dealing with. And if you want somebody to pray with you, I'm going to invite our prayer team. They can come up here, go right over here right now by the cross. If you want somebody to pray with you, whether it's for a struggle, whether it's for a praise, whether it's for someone, where the worship team is singing, you can come over and start doing that right then. If you want to figure out, how do I get off of the bench and into the game? How do I get into the mission of Jesus and serve? How do I connect? How do I take my next step? How do I grow so that I can build my faith and walk faithfully with God? At the end of the service, after the song is over, we're going to be over here in the Connection Center. There'll be a green light that says Connect. It's really hard to miss because it glows. Come talk with us. We would love to just be a support, a care, a connection piece, however we can be, because our job as a church is to grow together, to move together, and to become more like Jesus together. So we're going to stand, we're going to worship. Invite the worship team forward, and we're going to do that.